Hello, my name is Ryan Lake. I'm a Peace Corps volunteer here in Sierra Leone. I've been here for almost 2 years now. One of the questions that we get asked a lot from people who are planning to join the Peace Corps is what sort of things we should bring, right? So I thought I would go through and talk about most of the things that I brought with me here, the things that worked out well, the things that I wouldn't have brought, all that sort of stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So we'll start off with my bag, right? So this is one of the bags that I brought. Now we get out, this is the second bag that I brought. And a third bag. And then finally, one more large duffel bag. Okay, so when you come, right, you're allowed sort of two large bags, right? The requirements are pretty much the same for all of the airlines, so you can look what those are up. So for me, that was this big bag, and then also I brought this duffel bag with me as well as my second one, all right? You can bring more if you're willing to pay for it. I know one person in our group did, but I think 2 is probably fine for most people, so I would try to limit yourself to that. What I found with these, especially this larger bag like this, is that the weight limit is more of an issue than the actual size of the bag usually, right? So the weight limit for these is usually 50 pounds, right? Which may sound like a lot, but it's very easy to fill up quickly. So in terms of overpacking, the weight is the thing that you want to consider the most, right? So that goes for both of the 2 large bags, right? So then you're also allowed one carry-on bag. So this is a backpack that's designed specifically for the maximum carry-on bag dimensions that are typical, right? So one other thing that's nice about this one is that it's a backpack, which makes it nice to carry. This is also the bag that if I go on trips here in Sierra Leone, this is the bag that I'll typically take with me because it's very useful and easy to do for that. And then finally, you get like your personal items. So again, I brought a much smaller backpack for this, right? And so again, this I use pretty much every day here in Sierra Leone, especially when I go to school. This is what I would bring with me, right? So in terms of especially these 2 bags, right, being able to pick something that maybe would also be useful not just getting here, but while you're here, I think is a good idea, all right? So the last thing I'll talk about for the bags, right, is that when, especially for Sierra Leone, probably a lot of the other countries here in West Africa, if you get here towards the summer months, when a lot of the countries do, it's during the rainy season, right? So especially for any bags that you would be planning to use a lot around here, it's good to have some sort of rain cover that comes with it, right? So some bags come with them, some bags don't. If they don't, you can get fairly cheap ones, like this one I got from a company called Decathlon, right? They have some pretty cheap ones, right? But they're just sort of universal. They have them for different size bags. You can get them out like this, right? And then they just sort of clip onto your bag. I won't go through putting it on. But then you can attach it to your bag so that you always have it. That's nice to have like that, right? You get the same thing for this bag, just a slightly bigger one. Yeah, but you can see the same type of thing. The last thing I'll talk about for the bags before we get into the actual items, right, is that sometimes it is nice for organization, both when you're packing, but also when you get here, to have different things like packing cubes, right? So that's what these are. These are the ones that I'm not currently using for the rest of my stuff, right? But different bags like this, different organizers can be useful if you already have some, or if you want to get a few to help with your packing. Alright, so we'll move on. We'll go sort of in different stages. So we'll start with clothing because that's probably one of the biggest things that people ask about. Okay, so now I have with me here pretty much all of the clothes that I brought with me here to Sierra Leone. So before we start going through them, I want to touch on two things that I think are the most important things that we should consider if we're deciding on what we want to take or decide not to take. This goes not just for clothes, but everything that we end up taking, right? So the first thing, probably the most important thing, is to only bring things that we will actually use, right? If we bring something because other people suggest it, but we don't actually end up using it because it's not for us, if the clothes aren't our style, right, or anything like that, then it's just a waste of space when you're traveling and when you're here, right? The second important thing is to try to bring things that you can't get here in country, right? So this goes both for clothes and for other things, right? So maybe right now you're not really as sure about what is available, so I'll try to touch on that a little bit as we go through all of the different things. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the things that I guess are more like accessories, right? So I brought with me two hats. So this is something that I didn't really wear hats too much before I came here, but I thought it would probably be a good idea, and I have used these very much, as you can probably tell by the way that they look, right? But these are from the two universities or colleges that I went to, right? So, and I use these probably every other day or so, right? So, if you think this is something that's good, that you would want to use, yeah, go ahead and bring something like this. It doesn't have to be a baseball cap, but something to keep the sun off your head, that sort of thing. Okay. So, all right, so some other things, right? So the things that I sort of carry around with me every day, right? So sort of related to that, right? So a wallet is good because you end up using a lot of cash here, right? There really isn't that much digital currency, although there is a little bit, right? So something that, like this, that's good just to put some spare bills in to keep them readily available. That's good. This one does have a coin pocket, but you don't really need that because they only have one coin here. It's their smallest denomination, and it's worth so little that pretty much no one uses it anyways. So something that can carry bills is what's really needed for something like a wallet. Let's see. I get my phone, obviously. We'll talk more about that. I'll talk more about electronics and stuff in general, right? But some sort of phone is something that is good to bring with you, right? And then, so let's see, of the things that I carry every day with me. So another one, keys, right? So you'll end up getting several keys here probably. I would suggest bringing some kind of keychain because they are available somewhat, but they're somewhat hard to find. And if you can get some with something that's like useful on it, like this one, it has a few different small kinds of tools on it. It has a bottle cap opener. Something like this can be useful too. All right. Pens I carry every day because I am a education volunteer, so I teach school here, right? So a lot of the things that I'll talk about are related more towards that. Maybe it's suited to those of you who aren't school teachers as well, but yeah, we can talk about that when we get to it, right? So these sorts of pens are ones that I got here, right? They're very common, right? Just the sort of cheap disposable ones. The blue ink is very common. Even the red ink is pretty common too. So don't think that you have to bring red pens for teachers or anything. They're pretty common here. But if you want to get one that's a little bit nicer, that writes a little bit nicer or something like that, that's something that you should bring yourself too. And then finally, one that is very specific to school teachers, right? So one thing that school teachers use a lot is chalk. So I ended up, this isn't something I brought with me, but I have a little chalk bag that I keep it in so that I can keep it in my pocket, but it doesn't roll around. Although for this one, the zipper doesn't work anymore, so sometimes it opens and then it falls out, right? But if you can bring something like this, right, that's maybe a little bit sturdier than this, right, to hold chalk in or so that you can carry it around with you, that is very useful for school teachers specifically. Okay. So now we can get more into some of the actual items. So let's start with the pants, right? So for me, I wear long pants pretty much every day that I go to school, right? So these are the two that I wear the most. I mean, anything like this would do. They're called bluff work pants, right? But they're pretty nice. But so I wear these a lot. Um, I don't wear these ones as much. These are like the linen pants. I didn't really use them much before here. They're nice that they're very light and not as hot, but they don't look very nice. They can get wrinkled very easily, so I don't wear them very much. But maybe you want to consider something like that. All right, and the rest are just some jeans. I probably have too much of them here. Right, I brought some back when I visited the States a little while ago, so I have more than what I came with to begin with. Right, I think probably maybe two at most is fine. But yeah, something like that. So those are for like the long pants, right? And then for shorts, well, first I have a bathing suit, right? Then I have a number of different shorts, right? So anything like this is fine, right? That's what I'm wearing now. A lot of people will ask about the length of shorts, right? So I can show, for me right now, right, they come a little bit above my knee. I think all my shorts do, right? So this is fine for pretty much everyone, right? So what I will say, right, so like I said, this is tailored towards me, my suggestion, what I brought, right, as you can tell, right, I'm a guy, so a lot of the suggestions will be different if you're a woman who's coming, right. What I will say in terms of shorts, right, what people wear around is somewhat, I would say it's okay to have something a little bit above the knee, but not too much, right? But to go out and around, right? But if you're in your own house, I would definitely suggest bringing, so for myself, right, I have some just sort of shorter things and lighter things that I wear just around my house, right, for shorts, right, that would be fine for women as well, right? Also for women, one thing that they wear a lot they call them lapas, right? They're basically sort of like a piece of fabric that they tie around themselves with like a skirt pretty much, right? That goes below their knee, right? But pretty much everyone here also wears like shorts underneath them, right? So if you wanted to bring shorter shorts to wear underneath that and bring around the house, that's definitely good to bring for that. Okay, we can go on to the shirts. So I have a number of different t-shirts, right? Just different ones that I brought with me. They're just standard t-shirts, basically. I'd say bring at least 3 or 4 of them. That's probably a good number for that, right? I also have some polo shirts. Again, so this is a little bit more formal, right? But there's still a short sleeve, so they're kind of nice, especially some of these, right? So yeah, 1, 2, 3 of these, depending on what you want to do, that would be something good. What I usually wear for teaching is something more like this, that are the button down with the long sleeves. I like the long sleeves especially because if you're traveling or going out when it's hot, you can put the sleeves, you can roll the sleeves down to avoid getting the sun on your skin, right? Because that's usually where I would get sunburnt the most if I'm traveling or something, right? And you can't really avoid having your arms out in the sun. You have a long sleeve that you can roll down, right, to cover yourself, and then when you don't need to, you can roll them back up, and it's not that different from having short sleeves, right? So I have a number of different ones of these. This is mostly what I wear to school and stuff like that. Okay. For some other stuff, I would suggest having one sort of light jacket or something like this, because even though it is a very hot country here, it can sometimes get a little bit colder at nights at certain times of the year. So I brought 2 of them. Like I said, I think you only really need one. So this is just like a fleece. This one's a little bit more like a jacket. It has a hood on it. It's definitely not water resistant or waterproof, but it can repel water a little bit. So that is sort of nice if it's raining just a little bit to have something like that. Okay. Speaking of rain, I did bring a rain jacket with me. So this is something that rain jackets really aren't that common here, so if you wanted to bring something like that, this one can sort of pack up. So during the rainy season, I'll sometimes just put this into my bag because you never know when it can rain. And then you would have a rain jacket whenever you need it, right? And then you can just pull it out. Right, and it's just a standard rain jacket like that. Okay, yep, so that's pretty much everything in terms of those types of shirts and things. And I do have a number of different types of undershirts and things if you wanted to wear it underneath a button down or a longer sleeve shirt or something like that, or if just to wear around the house or something like that. So I will say that maybe not the tank tops that are like these sorts of undershirts, but tank tops are worn by women around here quite frequently, around the house and even a little bit outside, right? So that's something that if you want to bring something like that, I think it's fine to bring. All right. And then for socks, I brought a number of different pairs. I haven't ended up wearing them that much. After we finish with this, I'll bring out the shoes that I brought. But because I mostly wear sandals, I don't wear the socks too much. The main reason just because I don't want to go through washing them and all that stuff, right? And at my school, at least, I think most places wearing sandals or something is generally fine. Okay. But yeah, so I have several different types of socks. And then finally, if you've seen other packing lists, they usually say to bring a lot of underwear, right? So that's, I think, a good thing. So I brought a lot, and here's some more as well that I brought. Okay, so let me get out the shoes. So, like I said, most of the time I usually wear sandals or flip-flops or those sorts of things, right? So you can get flip-flops and all those types of things very easily here. I mean, they're mostly pretty cheap, but if you're fine with that, I definitely wouldn't bring any. You can get them very readily here, right? This is a pair that I got here. This is a pair that I actually brought with me from the States. I sometimes wear them, but they're pretty much the same. In terms of everyday use, right, these two are the ones that I use most of the time. These are Tevas, right, they're ones that are very common among the Peace Corps. And these are some Birkenstocks. I was a little worried about wearing something like this in the rainy season. And I don't wear them a whole lot, but they're generally fine in the rainy season as well as the dry season. So I also brought two different pairs of shoes, right? So just some regular shoes, these are some Lem shoes, and then boots as well. I thought maybe for the rainy season, boots like this that are, I don't think they're completely waterproof, but they're at least water resistant might be good. I would say they're really not necessary, especially for me in education. I don't really go out any place that I would really need boots. If you're in some other sector like agriculture, that's not here in Sierra Leone but other countries, or even maybe some health people that go out into the bush sometimes to go to different outreach clinics, maybe something like that, but I don't think they're really that needed. Just with sandals and shoes you get by generally. And then these are some like running sports type shoes that I haven't worn a whole lot, but they're nice to have for different things. Okay, but yeah, so that's basically it in terms of shoes. Okay, so some other things I forgot about. They recommend to have at least one thing that can be for more like formal occasions. So for that, I brought this vest. Again, this is more from a guy's perspective, right? I really haven't had the need to use it because a lot of times for formal occasions, it's fine to wear something. They call this Africana. This is the different types of shirts you can get made here, right? So I have this one. I have a second one that we got here too, right? So something like this that you can get made here is fine for any sort of formal occasion like that. So I don't think it's really that necessary for something to bring, especially if you have something that's somewhat like formal, casual type things like these button downs to wear as well. I don't think you really need anything more than that. In terms of stuff you can get here, they do have a lot of basically secondhand clothes here, right? So if you do any sort of secondhand clothes shopping in the US, it's not that dissimilar than that here in terms of getting clothes. They get, I mean, a lot of Western clothes that are straight from America, Europe, even some from China and stuff that have all different sorts of logos you can see on them and different types of things. You can get a lot of that stuff here, right? Um, like any sort of secondhand shopping, it can might be hard to get stuff if you're a not a common size or something like that. I haven't really gotten that many clothes here. Pretty much all the clothes that I've shown I brought with me. One of the other things, only things, I got one pair of dark pants, like black sort of dressy pants. And I got this one for my school because sometimes we need something a little bit more formal. But that sort of, like something like this, I definitely wouldn't bring with me, right? That is very case dependent, so I wouldn't bring something like that with me. But yeah, that's pretty much it inside of for clothes. The last few things, just sort of accessory type things. Before coming here, I really didn't wear a watch, but I thought it would be good to bring one, and I do use it pretty much every day, right? So just a very simple, not very flashy or anything like that, just a very small watch. This works very well for me, especially as a school teacher. And then for me, because I have longer hair, I bring in a lot of hair ties because I mean, you can get these here, but just having a lot here to use that you don't have to worry about it is good. Anything like that that you would want to bring for yourself, right, that you know that you would want to bring, go ahead and bring it. Okay, I forgot one last thing before I move on. All right, so one thing I would suggest to bring is a belt, because even if the pants and things that you bring fit you well when you leave, it's very possible, I think, for most of us that our waistlines can change either way when we get here, right? So that's something I would suggest bringing. This is one I brought with me. This is one that I got here, right? But I think it's definitely something that you should bring either way. Okay, so let's go on to the like toiletries and that sort of thing, right? So I think in general, right, most of the stuff that you will need, you would be able to get here, right? So when you first come, I think they say they recommend to bring something for like 3 months or so. So I think that's a general rule of thumb. I can go through some of this stuff and talk about what I brought and what types of stuff you can get here, so you can think about what things you might want to bring. All right, so to start off, deodorant. One of these I brought, one of these I got here. I don't even remember which one is which, right? So I mean, you can get deodorant like this very, I would say, somewhat easily. It's not every place, but you can find it if you look for it. Okay. So you might want to bring, I think I brought maybe 3 or 4 of these that last a while, and then for the rest of your time, you can find something here, right? So a similar thing for the toothpaste, right? This is one I actually forgot. I still had, right, one that I brought with me, like just like the standard crest. This is the type that you'll see here, right? I'm not sure how well it compares to what we would get from like the Western brands, but it works okay. So I would bring a few tubes of this, right, and then you can find other stuff here that you can use. Dental floss, I mean, this is something that you can bring several of these, a number of these with you to last probably your whole time here if you wanted to. It's not readily available here, but you can get it from medical and the Peace Corps. They can provide some for you if you need more. In terms of things like soap, so what I found, what I ended up doing, I brought a number of different types of bars of soap. I think the ones that work fairly well, I heard about these before I came, they're called Castile soap, right? So this is basically, you can use it for different types of things, right? For washing clothes, for washing yourself, even for washing hair. What I ended up doing with these, because you can use them as a bar soap, and so when I used that, I got these like little bags, right, that you can put them inside, and so when you use them, they suds up fairly well, and then you can hang them up to dry, so it's supposed to help the soap to last longer. This is one that I've been using, right? And then it also sort of acts as like a washcloth, so this is pretty much what I would use for a washcloth too. So you can use it in the bar form, but what I also found out you can do, which I've been starting to use, is you can basically melt it down, dissolve it in sort of water, or suspend it in water, right? And then you basically have liquid soap that works fairly well, right? So that's what I end up using mostly, especially for like washing my hands and that sort of thing, right? But so because of that, if you could bring something like this, if you wanted to try making your own liquid soap like that, that would be useful. This one I actually got from the Peace Corps because when we were first coming here, we were still in the times of COVID. So this was actually for hand sanitizer. I emptied it out and used it for soap, so that works pretty well. This isn't something that you could get here very easily, this sort of squirt bottle. So if you wanted to bring an empty one like this to use for like liquid soap, if you wanted to try to make some, that would work well. In terms of like shampoo and for, yeah, this is for shampoo, but also for body wash or that sort of thing. I would probably try to make something like this. Shampoo, this is something I got here. It's a little bit expensive and it's not that easy to get. What I'd like to try to do, I originally brought some sort of like this. They have like the bar shampoo. I brought some and I started using it while I got here, but I had to throw it out eventually because it got moldy. I would think you may be able to take that and try to turn it into some sort of liquid soap if you had a container to put it into. So that might be something you might want to think about. In terms of laundry, you can get laundry detergent and stuff here, but it can be nice to have stuff that is a little bit higher quality like we're used to in the States. So if you wanted to bring something like this, I got these when I came back about a year ago. They're laundry sheets, detergent sheets. I think there's 50 in here, so they'll last a while. Maybe not the whole time you're here, but a while. So something like that would be nice. So similar to that, I brought a few of these. They have different names for the brands, but like the Tide pens, or this one's OxyClean that can help to get out stains or something like that. That can be pretty useful. Okay, let's see. So I did bring like a washcloth like this. I also brought like a quick dry towel. That for me it works pretty well. I know some people don't like them, so if you don't like them, then I wouldn't bring them. But they're nice, especially if you're traveling here, to be able to use. You can hang up and they'll be dry overnight, basically. Just sort of the regular towels are fairly available here, so if you wanted to bring this and then wait until you got here to get sort of a normal towel, that's something you could definitely do. I put this out here because toilet paper isn't that readily available. Occasionally we'll stay in hotels and commandeer whatever's left over, so that's where I got a number of mine. But if you have extra room, because you're at the weight limit but you still have room, then throwing in a couple of those would definitely be useful to have here. So a few other things, so things like sunblock and bug spray, right? Those are some good things to bring. The Peace Corps can have some to provide. This isn't something you could really get here otherwise. They can provide some of these, but it's nice to bring some of your own stuff too if you wanted to bring some. And then just some smaller things, like I brought some ibuprofen again, any sort of medication stuff they can provide, but if you wanted to bring any of your own stuff. Nail clippers I brought. I don't remember if I mentioned a hairbrush for and then I did bring like one of these bags for, for toiletries and that sort of thing. It has a small mirror in it, which is somewhat nice, but it's not that usable. I would suggest, if you wanted to bring some sort of mirror, maybe something even bigger than this, that's better than this. That would be nice to have. And then so the sort of last thing, right, it's nice to have sort of like, again, Peace Corps can provide any sort of medical stuff you need, but if you wanted to bring a small bag like this to be able to carry with you if you travel or go different places, right, you can put anything you want in it. This one has sort of a mix of what came in here and some of the stuff Peace Corps gave us, so that's nice to have. Related to that, I have basically a smaller version of that I bring in my bag that I take with me every day to school, right? So it has just like a small thing of ibuprofen and some different like small like other pain things or antacid, that sort of thing, Band-Aids, right? So if you want to put just like a small bag that you could put that sort of stuff into, or a pouch like this that is nice to have to carry with you different places. Okay. Oh, and then finally, so you may have noticed that for my toothbrush, right, and also my shaver, right, they are electric. So if you wanted to bring anything that is electric, and I'll talk more about it when I talk more about, I'll do a section more on all of the different electrical type things. I would definitely suggest getting something that can be powered by USB, right? So pretty much all of these electric toothbrushes use the same type of stand like this. You can get a version that's powered by USB, so that can be powered off to like a power bank or something like that, so you could be able to charge that. The shaver, it didn't originally come with one that can be powered off USB, but I got an adapter for it that works, so I'm able to charge it, and yeah, so it works fine like that, right? I've been able to use it since I was here. Okay, so two more quick things. So the first one, I love this one out, but I forgot to talk about it. So these types of buckets became very common in West Africa around the time that COVID came, because it's very easy to use to wash your hands, right? So you can hook it up to a bucket like this, right? And so all that you really need is a bucket and this type of spigot. So like I said, these were very common around COVID, but since that time, they're not very common anymore, right? So I would definitely recommend trying to get something like this. Again, you don't need to bring the bucket, but it would be helpful if you can get something like this to take with you, since it's small and easy to pack, and you don't have to worry about trying to find one here. The last thing, right, I mentioned the toilet paper before, right, sort of related to this, right? There's other ways that you are able to clean yourself, right? And that's how most of the Sierra Leoneans would use here. So you would be able to get something like that. But for me, what I brought with me, you can get these sort of little adapters, right? There's different brands and things for them, but you can search for like a portable bidet, right? So this is one that you can attach directly to any type of bottle, really, right? And when you turn it upside down, right, you can get some good water to help you with cleaning in different areas, right? But so something like this can be very useful, especially when you're traveling, if you wanted to bring something like that. Okay, so let's start looking at some of the sort of basic kitchen stuff. So the first thing I'll talk about are so it's definitely good to want to bring some sort of water bottle. So you'll be able to get plastic water bottles here that you can use, refill and stuff, right? But it's still good to have a nice, at least one or two of them I think would be good to bring. I definitely recommend an insulated one, because even though you can't get it really cold here, because there's not really much chance of refrigeration, right? It's still cooler during the hottest part of the day than if you just have a regular sort of bottle, right? So any type of bottle that you want to bring. One that a friend gifted to me as well, this is one that has sort of a filter built into it. So especially if you're traveling and you're not as sure about the quality of the water, then something like this to be able to filter it while you're not home could be useful. I also brought, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this unless you already have one, but this is just like a little portable camping kettle so that you can boil water in. So it also comes with these cups that fit inside of it. So this is pretty handy for me, but again, unless you already have something like this, I wouldn't necessarily recommend bringing it. In terms of utensils, I think probably the most important ones to bring are a good can opener, because that's really not something that you can get very easily here, and a vegetable peeler, because again, it's not something you can't get very easily here. as well as like a sharpening thing, a knife sharpener. I also brought my own knives, and if you have some that you want to bring, I think that's probably good. They're pretty small and not that heavy, but just regular knives are pretty readily available here, right? But a knife sharpener like this. And also a good pair of scissors, right? So these can be good not just in the kitchen, but for cutting any number of things. Okay, so some other things. So in terms of utensils, right? Knives, spoons, forks are all things you can get here. I did bring some chopsticks because, I mean, they have a mostly rice-based diet here. I haven't really used them though because they don't really have the same type of sticky rice, so it's not really as like you would get in Asian cultures. So it's not really that easy to use them here. Um, I also, again, I wouldn't recommend bringing silverware, except I had found this. It's very useful for like basically travel silverware type things, right? It's sort of like a pocket knife, but instead of knives and things, it has a fork and spoon, and I think a can opener and different things on it, right? But this has been pretty useful. I just keep it in my bag if I'm out and someone gives me food or something like that, then it's something that's nice to have. So if you found something like this or have something and wanted to bring that, that's been kind of useful for me. In terms of cleaning, so they mostly would use rags and stuff here, and so that's what I mostly use too. They work fairly well. If you wanted to use something like a kitchen sponge, you might be able to get them here, but this is something that you might want to bring. They do have steel wool pretty readily available here. This is one that I got here, so that's not something that I would think you would need to bring. It's pretty easy to get here. So also, in terms of something like a hot pad to touch different types of hot surfaces, they don't really have something like that here. Again, they would just use rags. So if you wanted to bring something like that, that would be a hot pad. That would be something that's pretty useful. In terms of storage, I would definitely recommend different types and sizes of Tupperware or whatever brand or whatever you would want to bring. So something like that, different types of sizes, as well as Ziploc baggies, right? You can get the like larger ones and smaller ones. Smaller ones like this size are also pretty nice to have. So then more in terms of like the food and spices and things. So I would definitely recommend this was something that I'd seen. You can get different sort of like, I guess you can call them flavor packets or things like that. So just sort of very basic generic things like sort of Asian inspired or Mexican inspired, that sort of thing. So these are like fried rice mix, these are like a biryani. You can get lots of different types of things. You can get things like powdered or dehydrated soup, right? Anything like that that maybe you might want to bring to have occasionally, right? So that's something like this too. And then, so also in terms of spices, right? You can get things like salt here, although if you wanted to bring like an empty shaker to use for salt or a salt shaker that you can then refill here, that would be something good. I would definitely recommend something that you could put like a desiccant or some people use rice, I think, that they can put inside that would help to keep it from getting wet inside, to keep the salt dry, because especially during the rainy season it can get pretty humid here. But then some things that you would want to bring are like black pepper, and then any types of spices that you might want to use, garlic powder. The things I brought, so this one is curry powder, paprika, turmeric. Those are all ones that I use a lot. Oregano is almost gone. I use that a lot. Yeah, I said the garlic powder and salt. This one is like some taco seasoning, but I also have some in the packets here. Also, I brought some vanilla if that's something that you might want to use here. That's not something that's easy to find. Any type of snacks that, even though they might not last the whole time, would be nice to have, especially when you first come or getting settled in, right? So I brought some Nutella. You can get Things like this, and even Western brands in some of the bigger stores, but they can be more expensive and not as easy to get to, right? Maybe you'd only be able to get there once every month or so. So if you have any extra room or weight, you wanted to pack anything that you would think you might really miss, that's a good idea. And then finally, I put out this package of tea. This is some that I had actually gotten here, but if you are especially fond of a certain tea or coffee or anything like that, wanted to bring anything specific for that, and that's something that you think you really need, then definitely go ahead and bring that. So this sort of thing is much more personalized to you, but these are just some ideas about based on what I brought. Okay, so we'll move on to more of miscellaneous items. So these ones will be much more sort of specific person to person, but these are the things that I brought based on some suggestions from others and what I thought might be useful. Okay, so we'll start off with just sort of some like games and things that you might want to bring. All right, so packs of cards, maybe one or two, or specialized games like Uno, right? This is a very easy game for especially kids to learn, so this is one that they like a lot. Other types of games that you can think of, so I brought like bananagrams, maybe to help with some English, right? I brought a frisbee, right, because that's easy to bring. If you wanted to bring any sort of like sports balls, like soccer balls or basketballs, right? That's something you can get here, but it's very expensive, so the kids would be very pleased with that. They have like bike hand pumps that the Peace Corps even gives us since they give us a bike. So if you wanted to bring like an adapter that you could use a bike pump to blow up any sports balls, you could bring something like that. So I also brought like the blow up globe, right? So it's somewhat educational, right? These maps aren't necessarily 100% accurate, but it's still pretty good, right? And depending on how careful you want the kids to be with it, it can be like a fun toy thing to have too, right? So any sort of like exercise equipment type things, like a lot of people bring a yoga mat, right? If you wanted to bring like exercise bands like this one or larger ones, right? You could bring something like that to consider. Like I said before, I'm a school teacher, right? So different types of school supplies you might want to bring. So like if you have any spare scientific calculators, I would bring those. This is one that I got here, but they were kind of expensive for the kids, right? So if you have any extra ones you wanted to bring for yourself or other people. Sticky notes and index cards if you think you might want to use those. Any types of notebook for yourself if you want to journal or just write things down, right? I mean, they have just sort of normal notebooks here, but if you had anything special or anything specific you wanted to bring. Stickers or art supplies, right? So this was some things that were gifted to me, but especially for like grading papers, if you wanted to have something to encourage the kids, something like that. One thing I did bring for myself when I came back later on was paper clips, rubber bands, because just having a few of those around at different times can be useful. That's something it's not that easy to find here. So like a small sewing kit. I also have some extra tweezers and stuff that I brought here, but the small sewing kit like this could be useful. Things that are more like tools, right? So like a multi-tool that has like pliers, a few different like basic screwdrivers, a knife, something like this. Has been useful a few times for me. Things to sort of repair things that you might have that might be useful. So I brought some duct tape. That I haven't really used, but it still might come in handy. Just like a small thing of super glue. I use this to help fix some of my shoes, but something like this could be nice to bring. If you wanted to do any sort of gardening or outdoors work, right, some gloves like this. So moving on. So I brought a few different types of maps that to hang on the wall or like to show some students, right? So this is one of Sierra Leone. There's not too many of these you could find. This is maybe one of the only types, one that looks like this. I also brought a world map that might be good to help show off either at school or to decorate your walls or something like that. I also brought a number of different sort of picture books or specific to either Sierra Leone or Creole or like West Africa in general. I can put a list of some of the ones that I brought. So some of them are in English, right, and they're sort of set in West Africa. I got, I think, two total that are in Creole, so they have both either English and Creole or just Creole. So that's what this one has. So I thought that was nice, and I've given away one of these already. So if you wanted to bring something like that, even if you're not a school teacher, you thought this might make a good gift, yeah, something like that. There are some like different books on Ceylon. So this is like one of the standard like tour guides for Sierra Leone. I don't think it's necessarily something you need to bring with you, but I brought it. Different Creole books. So this one is, it's called Creole Salad. It's written by someone that is sort of promoted the use of Creole as a language within a language of itself, not just sort of an offshoot of English inside Sierra Leone. So it has sort of like poems and stuff inside about Creole, and just some sort of background about it is a little bit useful. I've read through it a little bit. Also, I couldn't find it, but I brought a Creole to English dictionary as well that has been somewhat useful. Okay, so moving on to more of like, okay, well, so this is just like a little laundry bag. So if you wanted to bring something like this, or like one of the foldable types that you'd see in like, that you get for dorm rooms or something like that, that can be useful. More for like bedding type things. So you can get sheets and pillowcases here, so it's not 100% that you need to bring them. I would definitely suggest though for fitted sheets, because that's not really something that you can get here. So for the fitted sheets, pretty much all the mattresses are fairly close to like they call it like the double size or the full size mattresses. So if you get ones that fit those, that would be a good size for that. In terms of a pillow, I would definitely recommend trying to bring something like that if you wanted to bring your full-size pillow. This is a camping pillow. A lot of times I wouldn't necessarily recommend the camping pillows because they're not generally very good. This one has been pretty good. It's from a company called Alps. I can try to put some information for that. But this is what I use every day. I still use it. This one's very good. It's a little bit smaller than a standard size pillow. I think it's like 2/3 the size. But you can, it comes with a compression case that you can pack it up pretty nice. So if you needed to travel with it, it's not that difficult, and it's still a pretty comfortable pillow. Also in terms of traveling while you're here, right, so some things that you might want to bring that can help with that. So this is called either a travel sheet or a sleeping bag liner, right? Travel sheet or a sleeping bag liner. So it's shaped like a sleeping bag, but it's basically just a sheet that you can fit inside, right? So I mean, inside Ceylon, you don't necessarily need a sleeping bag. It's good. That would be very warm, but something like this that's a sheet that's basically the same thing is very useful, especially for when you're traveling or when you first get here. I also brought just a sleeping pad, right? So again, if you're traveling and you don't necessarily have a mattress that you can stay on, if you have something like this, you can blow it up. It's made for camping, right? But for any sort of travel, it's pretty useful. If you have something like a camping hammock, so that's what this is, and some straps for it, that could be useful as well. I haven't used it too much, but even just around your house, if you have some place to hang it up, it could be something that's nice to have. Or like I said, when you're traveling, if you get some place that you could hook it up, this could be more comfortable even than the sleeping bag. If you don't already have one, I wouldn't necessarily go out and buy one just for this, but if you have one, you can throw it in. I think it'd be useful. Also, so this is like meant for hanging laundry, right? You can attach it to something, or if you just wanted to get just sort of like a regular rope that's used for laundry, this is something that I brought with me that's been very useful to hang laundry and that sort of thing. And finally, I think the last thing that I have here, okay, so two more things. So I also brought a money belt. This can be useful, right, to store your passport and any sort of money. Yeah, I would suggest bringing a little bit of American cash with you, just for in case you need to go back and forth, or just to have to exchange at some point as sort of a backup is good to have. But like I said, you can use this to store your passport, your WHO yellow card. Um, so around site, I don't really use this, but if I'm traveling or going to a big city, this can be good to carry those things a little bit more securely and with money with it. And then finally, I think the last thing, again, during the rainy season, it rains pretty much every day. This is an umbrella I got here, so you don't have to bring one. I wish that I had brought maybe a smaller one because you can't really get much choice when you get here. But if I had a smaller one to be able to put inside my bag like this, so it's easy to carry, you don't have to worry about bringing it or something like that. So it can be very nice and really encouraged to bring things that you could gift to your host family or other people in your community when you come. So one of the things that I brought, I forgot to mention before, are a bunch of these little pins like this. This was actually one, they give one to us at the closing ceremony like this. It has the American flag and the Salon flag on it. But I got a number of these as well to give away to people, so that's something that they tend to enjoy. So if you wanted to bring little things like that, or things from where you live in America, anything that you can think of, it would be a nice gift. That's something you want to keep in mind. Okay, so this is the last section that we'll talk about the different types of electronics, what I brought, what I maybe recommend and stuff, and then how I end up powering them, right? So this might be sort of a longer one, but we'll see. Hopefully we can get through everything. So one thing here that you might want to consider are these, so different types of solar panel lights. These ones are probably the most popular. They're called the Lucy lights. You've probably seen them before if you've done any research for things like these. But they are solar powered. They can take a while to charge, but they also last a while, so that they're pretty good. And they're decent for what they do. They have different brightness levels, right? There's different kinds of them with different like warmths to them, right? This is like a warmer light. This one is a colder one. Some other things you might want to consider. Some of them you can also power with USB in addition to the charging, so that can be pretty nice as well. These are fairly waterproof, so if you leave them out in the rain, even during the rainy season, they can still last pretty well, so that's why they're pretty good. There are many other types of solar lights, so if you happen to have any laying around, you want to bring any, I would suggest bringing however many you can or want. Maybe a few extra to give away to people, like I was saying. One thing I would recommend that if you can get ones that can both be solar powered and powered by like USB or something like that, that can be very useful to have. There's even ones that are more like like a headlamp too. I don't use it too much, but if that's something you might want to bring with you, you might want to consider something like that. But yeah, several of these different types of lights. This last one, again, can be USB powered, but it has a solar power as well. This is also Lucy lights, but these are like I forget what they call them, the chain lights, so they're almost like the fairy lights that you unravel them and then you can put them out, right? So these ones I don't like as much for a solar panel because you have to, if you want to go out and put them out to charge, you have to wind them all back up again instead of leaving them out. But since it has a USB power, if you just plug a USB power bank into it, you can leave them set up wherever they are. You don't have to take them up and down every time you want to charge them. Okay, so some other things that you want to consider in terms of entertainment. So things like a Kindle is highly recommended. If you want to bring regular paperback books or whatever as well, I mean, you want to bring your favorite book, that's fine. Like with something like a Kindle, this is an older one. If you wanted to get, if you have one, bring whatever one you have, basically. Okay, so things like even a Switch or maybe even a Steam Deck, something like that. So that's something that I brought, right? Something that you could use in your free time. If that's something you do now, right? You want to bring your own. That's something you can definitely do, and we can talk about how and the best way that we can power these things like that. So in terms of, we'll go ahead and move on. In terms of phones, right? So I actually ended up bringing two phones. That's not necessarily something you need to do, but basically I one for my American SIM card and one for my Salon SIM card that I got here now. If you have a phone and you're fine with it now, I wouldn't necessarily go out a new one. The phones that I generally use and the ones that I brought are cheaper phones, like $200 or less, that you can buy unlocked. You don't have to buy with a plan. If you can get ones with bigger batteries, those are good ones. If you can get ones that have dual SIM card, that's not as common in the United States as places in Europe, but if you can find them, those ones would be nice. Pretty much all of them now are USB-C powered, right? I would definitely recommend it. I would try to use USB-C for all or most of the devices that you have. Yeah, those are all nice things to have. I would also definitely recommend to bring extra cases, right? So the original case that I brought for this broke. I had to make do for a while, but then I was able to get a spare one. But if you bring in one or even two extra ones, that can be nice to have. It's because you can't get them very easily for your specific model of phone here. Similar to that, like bring extra glass screen protectors or something like that. They'll protect it. If it breaks, you can replace it, right? Otherwise, in terms of phones, like I said, you will get a SIM card here. The Peace Corps will also provide you with the phone. I think now, for the newer cohorts, I think the phones are a little bit better than the ones that they originally gave to us, so you could probably get by with it. But a lot of people in my cohort transferred their SIMs to an American phone to use them more easily. Okay, so similar to the phone, I would recommend bringing a laptop, especially if you already have one. Um, Again, anything can really do as long as you can find a way to charge it. We'll talk about that. If you have a choice, I would definitely recommend getting one that it has USB-C charging. I think most of the newer ones now would have that, so I would definitely recommend that. Ones that are maybe a little bit more sturdy, have a bigger battery again, or something like that, are all things you might want to consider. So I would also recommend bringing to go with it, right, a mouse, right, and even an extra keyboard. You wouldn't necessarily have to bring a big one like this, but a smaller one that has a smaller size, is maybe a little bit smaller. I would definitely bring one, both for your laptop. You could even hook it up to your phone if you have a USB-C adapter or an adapter that you could use with your phone. Pretty much any phone with a USB-C adapter like this, USB-C hub, right? You can hook it up to the phone. You can hook up lots of different things for USB. You could even do things like, I have it here somewhere, a USB drive to it, right? Or different things. That can be very helpful. Oh, so the reason I suggest a keyboard is because for at least two of us I know, including my own, a number of the keys stopped working. And that's something that's not easily fixed here. Even getting a USB keyboard like this is not something that's very easy to do and can be fairly expensive. So that goes along with pretty much everything here, even things in terms of very simple cables, like if you have a lot of USB-C things, I would bring many different USB-C cables, right? If you have USB-C to USB-C, or the USB-C to the regular USB, they call the USB-A, right? I would definitely bring several different ones of these, several different things that you might want to bring, of any cable or thing that you might want to bring, especially if they're cheaper, right? Especially for the USB-C, because here, even though there are a lot of phones and things, most of the ones here are still the micro USB, so they don't have a lot of the USB-C cables. If you use Apple cables, I'm not sure what they're called anymore, if they're still called Lightning. I think some of them are still going to USB-C again. But it goes the same for the Apple cables, right? There may be some here that you can find, but it will be harder, it will be more expensive probably. So it's better to bring many different cables so that you can have them if you use them or if they break or that different things. Even for things like headphones, right, I would bring several of those if you wanted to. For my laptop, it's a little bit older, so it's one that you could still swap out the battery to it. But again, if you have a bigger battery or if you can power it by battery banks, we'll talk about those. That's nice to have. And then also, before I forget, right, if you have anything that can be powered by USB, so I already mentioned like an electric toothbrush you could charge by USB, my razor, right, you can charge by USB, different like small USB fans, one like this, or what's probably better, they have like handheld ones. I know that a number of people brought, you can get those here, but again, they're pretty expensive, they're not that easy to find, but things like that. Okay, so a number of people would want to bring like a DSLR camera. If you have one, you're used to using it, you want to use it, I would bring it. I wouldn't go out and buy one if you don't already have one and aren't familiar with using one. Just a regular phone is more than enough. What I did bring that is sometimes fun to use is an instant camera, right? So you can think of like a Polaroid, right? So this is one that you can click it and you immediately get the picture out. It sort of develops in your hand, right? They make some newer ones now, so Polaroid does make some new ones. Another brand are the Fujimax. They make them now. So that's what this one is, the Fujimax Instant Film. Yeah, so that's fun because even though, again, a lot of people have phones here so they can take pictures, they can show pictures to people, but they don't have a lot of physical printed out photos here. So something like this that you can take a picture and give it to someone or take a picture and keep for yourself to hang up on your wall or something, that can be nice to have. They also have ones like this where it's just, it's not actually a camera, it's more like a printer that you would take a picture with your phone and then you can print off with the same technology that they use in the instant camera. So it's basically like a little printer for photos. Okay, so two more things I want to talk about before I forget. So one of the things that I brought that has been very useful, I started using it more often, is a small portable projector, right? So you can use this to show videos or things or movies to friends or people around. I've even started using it in school a little bit. It's very nice to be able to basically any place that you get a flat wall and you can get somewhat dark. This works very well for that, right? There are a number of different types that you can get. This one is called the Anchor Nebula. It's one of the first ones that came out. There are other ones now. You would want to get ones that are battery powered that you can charge. Some of the ones that they say are portable projectors. You still have to plug into a wall. That's obviously not the kind that you would want, right? So something like this, I have just a little protector that I put it in for the case, right? And then also, I use it in conjunction with this, but if you want to bring something like a USB speaker, this is a pretty big one, but a lot of people bring USB speakers or Bluetooth speakers that you can hook up wirelessly or even with an audio cable. So that's something that a lot of people bring. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's start to talk about how to go about charging the things that we have. So there's sort of two different categories that we can talk about, right? So we can talk about powering things with DC, right? So this is direct current. So this is basically anything that's USB powered. This is what will be DC, direct current powered, right? There's also things that you can power with AC, right? They call it the alternating current, the AC. This is anything that you would plug into your wall, right, to power. So this, the AC, is something that is not very common here. You probably will not be able to charge. I would still bring, in terms of the adapters that you would bring, I did bring this a large surge protector like this. You could get smaller ones like this one. I think, especially if you have a smaller one like this one, this is nice to have at least one of these so that you can extend it. They have the surge protectors on it. because even if you find a place with AC that you can hook up to, like maybe you go to a hotel or some place that's a little bit nicer that has an AC hookup, like at the Peace Corps compound or the training site, they're still hooked up to solar power, so it's nice to have a surge protector on it in case something goes wrong, or just to have extra outlets so that you can charge more things with it. In terms of AC, there are two things that you want to consider, right? So the first one is the electrical standard. The second one is the physical plug that it uses, right? So these are two separate things that you want to pay attention to. Right, so first for the physical plug, because this one's a little bit easier. So these use, I forget the name, you can look it up, but it's basically the UK standard. That's the very most common one, right? It looks like this. It has sort of the square prongs on it. So definitely anything that you would get that you can plug in, you should get either ones that directly use that, like this one, or you can get adapters that can use it, that can hook it up into this, right? You can get the universal adapters that you can plug anything, the USB plugs or anything into it. This is a very simple one. You have more complex ones you might see, right? So I have a whole bag of different types of adapters. But like I said, the UK one is the most important one. Some other ones you might want to consider bringing. There is one other type that if you look it up, it says some places in Ceylon use. I have seen one place that uses it, but I've never been in a situation where I have to use it. I forget the name, but this is what that looks like. So if you want to bring maybe one of those, you can, but it's not really that necessary. One other thing I will say, if you buy any sort of electronic charger or something here, most of them, even though the country uses the UK standard, most of the chargers and stuff that they sell here will actually use this kind. It's more like the kind that they use in mainland Europe, like France and Germany, right? It has 2 or sometimes 3 prongs here, right? The reason for this is because a lot of this stuff comes from Guinea, and this is the standard that they use in Guinea. So what they mostly end up doing is using this one, and they jam it into the socket for the UK plug. You can do that, but you're not really supposed to. It's not that safe, but that's what a lot of people do here. But if you get a universal adapter like this, right, you can plug in almost any plug into it, and then it can go into whatever plug you need, like the UK plug or American plugs, that sort of thing. Okay, but having these types of adapters, especially the UK type, is the most important one to bring, just in case you can find a place to use it. In terms of the electrical standard, that's the second thing you need to think about, right? So the electrical standard they use here is just like they use in the UK and most of Europe. So you want to look at 2 things. You want to look at the voltage and the frequency that they use, right? So in the US, the standard that we use is 100 to 120 volts at 60 hertz. That's the frequency and the voltage, right? Here and in Europe, they use 220 to 240 volts at 50 hertz. That's the frequency. So it's a very big difference. If you try to use a US plug that's not suited for it, it can damage it, maybe even damage your equipment. However, most of the AC adapters, so most of the things that you will plug in your electronics equipment in now, can work on both standards, right? Again, almost all of them can now these days. So I have a number of examples. This is for like a laptop charger. This is a switch charger, even very small ones that are just like USB chargers. If you look at them, you can read on them. It says what the input is, right? So if the input says like 100-240, that means it can work on both voltages. If it says for the frequency 50/60 hertz, it can work on both standards, right? So as long as you have an adapter that works on both standards, you don't have to worry about any sort of electrical conversion. All of your things will just work on it, right? So I would look at all of your chargers if you want to bring anything that you want to plug into the wall. I would only bring ones that would work on the electrical standard here, so you don't have to worry about any sort of electrical conversion. All that you would need to convert is the physical plug. Those are much cheaper and much smaller and lightweight. Yeah. So that's pretty much it for in terms of the AC power. In terms of the DC power, this is what I would recommend to try and get something that you can charge all of your things with DC power, right? So again, this is like the USB power, or so the USB power is on 5 volts, right? Or a lot of the equipment will work on 12 volts. So this is like what a car would use. So like a cigarette lighter is 12 volts DC. So anything that could work with this. So for example, for my instant camera I showed, it uses a special type of camera battery. I found some rechargeable ones that you can recharge with the 12 volts, right? So I can use this and hook it up to my solar with the 12 volts so that I can recharge the battery without having to worry about doing any sort of conversion to the AC. So if you can use things that can convert to the 12 volt or the USB, if all of your things can, then that's something that I would recommend, right? So the way that you can do that, one of the things that I would suggest the most is, so if you can just charge it with the USB, right? So you can charge up the USB battery banks, you can use the USB directly off of that. But especially for things with USB-C, I would recommend something like this. It's called Bix Power, B-I-X. I can put some information or a link. What this does, it can take DC voltage from a very wide range. I think it goes down to like 8 or 9 volts. It goes up to like 24 volts. So you can hook it up to pretty much any solar system. And it outputs on USB-C. It can do just the regular USB standard for very small things like the fan, like if you have lights or the Kindle, right, the charging off of it. It can be very low power USB things. But if you have higher power USB things like the phone, so the standard for the phone charging to be able to charge it quick is called quick charging. This can do that. For the laptop and bigger things, the USB-C standard is called power delivery, or PD. This can do that, right? So this is very useful for charging USB-C things that take more power, like your phone, your laptop, even the battery banks, right? It would take a long time to charge over just the USB standard, the USB-C, but if you get something that can charge with quick charge or power delivery to them, then they can charge much faster, they can make better use of your solar system. So again, this is something you can hook up to basically any solar system that has those voltages, right? You would need this barrel jack to be able to convert to it, but it already comes with something like this. If you can't do it directly from your solar power, you could chop this off, and because it comes with this anyways, and wire it up, and then you don't have to worry about damaging the cord that's directly attached to it, right? But that's something that you could consider. We'll talk more about that. I'll talk more about the solar panel, what I'm using, what I suggest later. But this is probably the most important part, for me at least, being able to charge over the USB-C. Okay, so in terms of the battery, the power banks, right, I would suggest getting several of these. I have, I think, 3 of them now. I've brought 4 or 5 total, and I've had one completely die. One of them, it's actually charging. The light that I'm using right now is kind of hit or miss in terms of charging. It's working right now. But because of that, again, I would suggest bringing 2, 3, 4 of these, especially the bigger ones. So if one of them dies, you can use the other ones. If you use different brands, maybe one brand works better with your phone or your laptop or your Switch better than another brand. But that's something that you could research when you're looking into them. This one is some Chinese brand. I got it because it's supposed to work well with the Switch, and it does. This one is an Anchor. This is a very common, very well-known brand. So this one is probably my favorite one. It's been pretty good. This is, right now it's hooked up to my hotspot. That's something I got here. We can talk more about that later. If you have just smaller ones, this is one that's solar powered. The solar power doesn't really work well for a USB battery bank. I just use it, I just plug it in to charge it. But if you have a smaller one to charge lights, like the Lucy Light type things, if you wanted to use that for that, that would work well. In terms of battery banks and solar, one brand that you hear a lot about and that I used when I first started coming here is called Voltaic. So that's what this is for. It's the battery bank. They have a solar system that you can hook up with it too. Right now, in some cases, I could recommend it. What's very nice about this one is you can charge with USB-C. It can charge with the power delivery and the quick charge, like I talked about, like this. All of these other bigger power banks can also do both the quick charge and the power delivery, the PD. So that's something that you should look up when you're researching which ones you want to buy. So like I said, this one can charge over all of those. It also has a number of adapters that it can use to hook up to laptops, older laptops especially, that do not have USB-C. So if you have an older laptop that cannot use USB-C, this is one that I would recommend for that. What I would not recommend this for, and what I tried using this for to begin with, is to use directly hooked up to a solar panel to use all of the time like that. So that's what I did when I first came here. I just kept it hooked up to a solar panel, and it died. It no longer holds a charge after maybe 3 or 4 months. So apparently, even though they sell them with these solar panels, you can hook them up to them. They're not designed to be used 24/7 in this case. So in that case, I wouldn't recommend it for something like this. In terms of the battery size, even though these ones look very different in terms of size, in terms of the power that they're able to hold, the charge that they're able to hold, they're pretty much the same. So I'm not exactly sure why this is so much bigger. I think it probably has some sort of solar charger built into it, but again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend charging it off of solar that much, or definitely not constantly. So in terms of the battery size, there's a standard size that all airlines you're allowed to bring with you that you cannot exceed. I think it's something like 100 watt hours. So most of the ones that you can see like this will fit under that amount, right? This is another one. It's someone gifted to me. It is a power bank. It can do all of the USB Type-C, and it also has an AC adapter that you can plug in some stuff to it. What's not so good about this one specifically is that if you want to charge it over DC, because you can, it has a DC in, it has to be something like 19 volts. So we'll talk about the solar system in a little bit, but most of them are 12 volts, like I talked about the same one that you use for the car charger, right, for the 12 volts. So for this one that it requires 19 volts going in, you cannot charge it with most standard solar setups, right? So this one, even though it would be nice to be able to use the AC for that, you can really only use it if you can plug it into AC anyways. You can't use it to use with the 12 volts DC in. That's a similar thing to the Voltaic. Another reason why I don't necessarily recommend it. You can charge it over USB-C, so if you already have something that can take your solar panel to USB-C, you can charge it that way. It has an input for DC, but again, it cannot charge over 12 volts DC. The lowest it can go is 18 volts. So you cannot charge it directly over DC with at least the type of solar system that I have right now. You would need a higher one. That is something that you could do by directly plugging in a solar panel to it. That's what I did initially coming here, but again, that fries the battery, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. Okay, so let's finish off with talking about the solar system itself, like this kind that I had. So most things you would be able to get here directly in Sierra Leone. So the things that you'll want to consider when you're purchasing them here, the main things that you'll want are a solar charger. So this is what connects directly from the solar panel to your battery. The solar charger, and this is what determines sort of the overall voltage of your system, if you have the 12 volts or the 24 volts, whatever you can use to hook up. Again, most things, if you want to use the 12 volt, that's what most of the smaller systems, like what we would be using, are capable of, the 12 volts. Then you would also connect the solar charger up to a battery. And so most of the batteries that you would get here look basically what you would see like in a car, right? So the one I had, it's just like a standard lead acetate battery. It's pretty big. You can get different sizes of them. The one that I got is fairly large. It's kind of expensive because of that, but using it, I'm able to charge all of these things. It works very well for me. So I would suggest getting something like that. If you want to be able to charge things like this, to be able to hook up different lights to it, like this one, you could run during the night off that for the whole night and it would last fine. Or other USB powered things like the fan. So the solar charger and the battery is what this is combined together, even though it seems like the solar charger for this doesn't work very well. So that was the simplest system that I used when I first came here. Both the solar charger and the battery are something that you can get in country. If the most important thing I think is the Bix Power, something like this that you can charge from DC going to the USB-C standards, right? That's probably the key thing that you can't get here. One other thing you might want to consider getting for the solar charger, there are two basic types. One of them, the cheaper one, is called PWM. That's the type that you can get here. You can get it a lot in the States. It's the cheapest one, like I said. The other type that's a little bit better is called MPPT. If you can find a cheap one and you want to bring that with you, that's something that you can't get here. It's better for a number of reasons. It can accept a wider range of voltages, I think, and it's just a little bit nicer. That's the kind I brought with me after I visited and returned back to and was what I use now. I'm very happy with that. So I can link to what I have for that. If you're interested in learning more about solar, it's something I would definitely look into more to decide if you want to bring different things with you. But if you're not that interested in it, or you're apprehensive about learning it or getting things right, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would still suggest bringing something like this. You can learn while you're here, people can help you out, or you can get up simpler systems that don't require that much knowledge or upkeep or anything like that. The only thing else I'll mention in terms of solar panels, I did end up bringing a fairly large solar panel with me. I would not suggest doing that. They're very common here. The only type that are not common here are more of like the foldable, portable ones. If you wanted to use ones like that, that's something you would need to bring. They're good for more temporarily. If you want to charge something, lay it out and then take it back after a few hours. They're good for that, but they're not something that's good to leave out in the rain. So they're not good for a permanent setup. If you want a permanent setup for the solar panel that you attach to your roof or something like that, that's something that you would buy here. That's very easy to get here, many different types of sizes for that. So I think that's pretty much everything I can think of. If there's anything that I forget, I'll try to leave some note about it somewhere. Other than that, if you want to ask me any questions, you can try in the comments, or if you have my contact, I would be more than happy to help with any questions or any issues or comments that you have. Okay, so thanks for watching. Bye.